There's nothing more pathetic than an aging hipster.
So this is the last episode of my investigative look into critical theory and cultural Marxism. And we've run into a lot of different things. We know that there are cultural Marxists that are still working at Lucasfilm. We know that they have said to people they want to indoctrinate the children. And that goes with Andrew Breitbart's investigation on his own in his book, Righteous Indignation, of what the founders of cultural Marxism want to do. They're not into workers of the world unite. They're into tearing down the middle class. Because several of these guys were horrified when they ran to the United States that people were happy and the individual was celebrated. It's about collectivization, right? You look at all these buzzwords: hegemonic power, racism, oppression, microaggressions. I mean, what the fuck? These things are made up by the professors who were taught by the professors who were taught by the professors who were taught by the OG cultural Marxists. If you get mad at someone who's black or who's a member of the LGBTQ community or an angry leftist woman, they will scream oppression, racism, sexism, and a microaggression. What are they even talking about, right? What does this even mean? They scream white privilege without looking at how white people live. And there are white people who scream that, right? I mean, if you look at the BLM activists and the Antifa activists, they're white trust fund babies. They're white people, right? They scream social justice, but what does that mean? To them, that means taking away from the middle class, who they hate. Petit bourgeois is what they would have called us before. Taking away what's ours and giving it to the state, right? Not even real equal sharing. They go after the family, men, heterosexuality, which they made up a word called cisgender, and this is what we have in Star Wars. Now, I want you guys to understand that there are people that are very much cultural Marxists that probably don't know that they are. Their idea of social justice, like I said, is take away from people who have something and spread it around, as Barack Obama said. These are the boomers. And liberals can be, I think, separated into two groups. Liberals and liberal progressives, leftists, okay? Leftists are the ones that are dangerous, right? Liberals are the ones that, they disagree with you on things, but they're not going to try to take something from people for a government power grab for the collective, right? Where does Kathleen Kennedy stand on this? Well, if actions speak louder than words, and they do, She is pretty much on the hardcore left. Her art collection, and just the people that she brought in to Lucasfilm to make content for Disney Plus, and or the Star Wars franchise. Leslie Headland, I mean, she's the first one. I think she's the one, even almost more so than Ryan Johnson in a way, that defines millennial cultural Marxist, right? Or even, dare I say, sadly, Gen X cultural Marxist. That would be Ryan Johnson. And she's the one that basically said George was a misogynist and that he wouldn't have been smart enough to hire Ralph McQuarrie to do the concept art, to show the Fox executives exactly what he wanted to do. And what's interesting to me is that she's gotten away with it, right? She's gotten away with it. The fact of the matter is, she's, without even probably realizing it, because we're not dealing with a very well-educated woman, she says she's a Star Wars fan, but then she basically erases Star Wars history when she opens up her mouth, which is, I think, probably an unconscious thing that she's been conditioned to in her own life by teachers, by friends, by the circle that she runs in. You know, you either discount the truth or you erase it and create an alternate universe. And that's exactly what she did. And when you look at her ideas on Star Wars through The Acolyte, the stories that she told us, she turned in scripts. Kennedy said they were great scripts, but now do a Star Wars script according to Leslie Headland. So she did, and what we got was an attack on heterosexuality, the family, Star Wars itself, the fake patriarchy she thinks rules the world, right? And, I mean, this woman would have no problem looking right at any of us, calling us cisgender, which, in my opinion, is the same as calling a black person the N-word if you're white, right? Or using the K word when you're yelling at somebody who's Jewish, right? It's bigotry. And this has been instilled in them. They look, and we know what Kennedy wanted her to do was put her own spin on Star Wars. She did, and it was terrible, right? Again, she had basically attacked everything that Star Wars was fundamentally about. And if you, from the casting, no white men as heroes, to attacking George's creations and the institutions in those creations. Because that's what they have to do. They don't, look, like I said before, cultural Marxists might not even know they're doing it because they've been so indoctrinated and so brainwashed into this, I would call it a cult. The woke cultural Marxists are cultists, right? Kennedy allowed this in. And the damage that this has done to Star Wars, to Indiana Jones, etc., has been unfathomable.
I love democracy. I love the Republic.
The main thing is to protect these characters, make sure that they still continue to live in the way that you created them, and that the universe of Star Wars continues to grow.
For 10 long weeks, the Star Wars company labored on the suburban London sound stages, bringing to life a film that had begun as an idea with George Lucas 3 years before.
So I'm going to preface this part with a couple of statements from Righteous Indignation by Andrew Breitbart, page 106. When I was at Tulane, I saw the same cultural forces at work, the forces of the thought police, of the cultural fascisti, people in positions of power who decided what was okay to think and what to write, what words meant, and who was allowed to say them. Tribunals without oversight, kids thrown out of college for uttering the wrong sentiments. Looking back, I thank God every day that I partied to excess at Tulane because it kept me from buying into that worldview, from learning the language. Interesting, learning the language. Okay, remember that. If I hadn't been busy having fun, I could have become a professor, gotten tenure, and taught that cultural Marxism, propagated it for a living. I could have reinforced and propagated complex because it would have reinforced my position. Later, I saw that the cultural Marxism of Tulane wasn't restricted to Tulane. It was everywhere, from the mainstream media to Hollywood, to the educational system to the government. When I began researching the origins of that pervasive culture, Marxism, cultural Marxism, I realized that this wasn't a result of America's suddenly and spontaneously embracing a rebellious counterculture in the 1960s. It started long before that. It started from the beginning. So you have two people here, George Lucas, Kathleen Kennedy. George Lucas in Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and Willow ultimately holds up the basis of Greco-Roman Western culture, the individual, and honoring one's heritage. Kennedy, by the very nature of who she hired, even to her art collection, is a cultural Marxist. And, her hirees are who she is. What you do in my name reflects upon me, right? Let's talk about Ryan Johnson. Ryan Johnson takes the intersectionality, LGBTQ shit, the lies of oppression, of hegemonic power, and the cisgender bigoted evil of the LGBTQ community, the so-called white privilege, the lies of social justice, and he ran with it. From the advent of Vice Admiral Gender Studies to Rose Tico's Maoist diatribe in the subplot to Nowhere, Cantobite, right, attacking the wealthy. Now you have to understand, these people are special. They get to be rich. They're the ones that decide what you see, what you say, and what you think. They're the ones that go out and cancel people, right? J.J. Abrams attacks Han Solo and Princess Leia. He opens up the door for Ryan Johnson to introduce all this intersectionality shit with Leia and completely erase any relationship she had. It's like they both went overboard to erase the OG in every way they could. And they went against the very nature of the franchise because it upholds Western values. The Greeks believed in individual achievement. The Romans believed in national honor, right? And to sacrifice for Rome, right? These two are not closely considering anything from the Joseph Campbell side of the world. Joseph Campbell was not a cultural Marxist. A cultural Marxist cannot fathom individual merit. Ultimately, Star Wars is about that. Luke Skywalker, right? The farm boy who becomes the last of the Jedi, whose father was Darth Vader. They had to take that idea and turn it on its head. They turned Luke and Leia into very immature characters, as if they had never been through anything before. If you look at the novel Bloodline from Fat Claudia Gray, Leia is very unaccepting of who she is. In the EU, she accepted it, right? She accepted where she came from, who she was, to the point where Han and Leia named their youngest son after Anakin. This was grown-up Star Wars. The Star Wars that cultural Marxists like Pablo Hidalgo scream for. That's what that was. And what they did was they stick their nose up at the regular family. J.J. Abrams has a family, right? He has a wife and daughters. Ryan Johnson is married to one of the biggest feminazis on the planet out in California. So he's a lost cause. Pablo Hidalgo and his wife, they don't have kids. They didn't even try to have kids. There are other people at Lucasfilm that, I would probably like to have dinner with and ask them some questions. If I ran Lucasfilm, before I decided if I would keep them or not. And because of not what they say, it's what you get in your face when you see something, right? There's a reason why people doubt Dave Filoni, right? Is he strong enough to say, we can't have this in there, the fans won't like it? Or does he actually believe the bullshit, right? I understand people questioning him. Now, I also know that he's a devotee of George Lucas. And so I trust that aspect, all right? But again, there are cultural Marxists still working at Lucasfilm. Pablo, his wife, Matt Martin, Hal Hickel, the animator, and they were the ones that were part of the Fire Gina Carano hashtag on Twitter, right? They were the ones that did it. And, when you've got that you've got a cesspool of people like that working, why do they get jobs like that? Well, they got jobs like that because they were hired by someone who might not know that she is a cultural Marxist, but she hired them and then is upset as to why people think why they didn't work. Why didn't Indiana Jones work under her? Because you introduced your typical angry, skinny, condescending, smug, feminazi, brunette, fourth wave feminist in Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who's a hateful person. Why didn't Star Wars under Kennedy work? Rey, the destruction of all three of the heroes, Rose Tico's stupid speech, Vice Admiral Gender Studies, the lack of a plan. It was like, here are these stories, let's try to fit every, stupid watchword, buzzword in our vocabulary, from hegemonic power to cultural supremacy to sexism and white privilege and patriarchy. And really, when you look at the sequel trilogy, it undermined what they consider as bad, which is a patriarchy. And where's the patriarchy in Star Wars? Leia is every bit as important as Luke and Han. They're equals. The lie of patriarchy that Ryan Johnson shoved out there and others have shoved out there doesn't make sense with what George created, right? It doesn't. They're looking at what he created saying it was misogynistic. No, it wasn't. If it was, Leia would have been a helpless woman. And that's not how it happened. If she would have been helpless, like your usual princess in the tower, the whole show would have fallen on its ass, right? This is a transformative character. The first time I think people actually saw a woman as an equal to a man. Not the same, which is what Leslie Headland and Phoebe Waller-Bridge and women like that actually think women are superior to men. That's cultural Marxism, right? So this is where we go with Kathleen Kennedy. We do know that she was the quarterback for her high school football team back in the 60s. I want you guys, this is the 60s. Wrap your brains around that one, right? So we're seeing her philosophy, without her saying it, out there in the Star Wars franchise. That is cultural Marxism. What we got from George Lucas is a look into what made the West so strong. And it starts with the stories we told each other around the campfires. Up in, Scandinavia with the Vikings, in Athens and Sparta, the Roman theaters, what they believed in. The gods were aspects of the human condition, right? And then we get the hero's journey of Jesus Christ, which is the ultimate hero's journey. Kathleen Kennedy wants to destroy the idea of the hero's journey because she thinks women have been left out of it. May I introduce her to the Blessed Mother, Mary? Okay, this is the problem. They literally hired the wrong person to work at Lucasfilm as the head of Lucasfilm. Because instead of understanding what she had, she might have understood it, but she wanted to destroy it. And if she didn't understand it, she destroyed it anyway out of ignorance, which is either intentional destruction, which is evil, or ignorant destruction, which is just incompetent foolishness. But this is cultural Marxism, right? This is the stuff Andrew Breitbart talked about. And if you want to know more, I suggest you go on Amazon and get a used copy of Righteous Indignation and read the chapter called Breakthrough. I will leave you guys with this. Adam Smith's capitalism, of course, was based on the same principles, not the pure greed and selfishness Michael Moore or Barack Obama would have us believe. Smith knew that capitalism, the exchange of products of the products of one's best efforts for the products of someone else's best efforts, required people to act with virtue. And then he talks about Founder's realistic view of human nature and call for limited government and individual liberty found its opponent in the philosophy of Jean-Jacques Rousseau and later Karl Marx. Now, once you get into this chapter, you're going to look at Star Wars of the sequel trilogy in a whole new different way. So I want to put this out there. This is a very long video, I'm sorry. And this is the problem with Kennedy's era of Star Wars. Cultural Marxism and the destructive, toxic brew of garbage and made up oppressions that the directors and showrunners feel are out there, have done them wrong. Introducing things that don't need to be introduced. LGBTQ shit, Maoist doctrine, etc. This is Steph signing out. See you around the galaxy.